back to him. He wondered what he'd remember next. Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lupino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lupino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, we see this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. Zenobia wasn't just the Emperor's daughter, of course. She'd been Renato's best friend in sword fu school. And you're still mad for her, the rabbit reminded him. They'd been close. She'd told him things no one else knew. But she'd never told him who she really was. She knows all the Emperor's plans, chuckled the master spy. She won't give them up easily. She'll tell the interrogators, all right, said Lupino. Taking her would change the game, all right. The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Renato shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Could he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty.
Can't we just agree to disagree? Said Renato. No?
These things could really use a hand. So, what's this plan of yours? Use me as bait, said Lupino. And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer a little bit on fire, Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Reynardo hiding inside a monstrous watermelon. What could possibly go wrong? Thought Reynardo. Oh, this is gonna be fun, said Lupino, as he ran to go set up his marvelous plan. A crafting bench. Reynardo wondered what he could make with it. Reynardo felt like he was ready to learn new things. Thank goodness he didn't have to go to school for that. Reynardo felt dubious about the whole plan. With every step, he was waiting for it all to go horribly wrong. But against all odds, Lupino's idiotic plan worked. Zenobia's ravens ran off after the geese, the net dropped, and Reynardo jumped out of the watermelon and put his sword to Zenobia's throat. Reynardo, she said, are those new scars? They look good on you. You never returned my velvet jacket. It was my favorite. You look stupid in velvet. Oh, what does an imperial princess know about style? Oh, get a room, you two, said Lupino. But the fleet was coming on fast, so they put Zenobia on the Farfarer and took her east, over the Nexus. She'd vanished from Swordfu School, from his life, without even saying it, without ever telling him she was the Emperor's adopted daughter. Ah, Lupino was right, Reynardo thought reluctantly. She knows things. She recognized his look. You're taking me to the interrogators, aren't you? She said, wide-eyed. And then she jumped, with horror. Reynardo saw Zenobia plummeting. Then he saw the Nexus below them. Cats always land on their feet. Ah, she'll head for the Imperial outpost, yelled Lupino. You have to catch her. Cats can run faster, but foxes can run longer. If he ran, he could head her off before she reached her minions at the outpost. Well, he did love a good chase. It was a bit windy up here. He was practically sure he'd find something useful in one of these things. Who needed bridges anyway? He was closing on her. He could smell her fear. He tried not to think about the interrogators at the secret base. What did they do to her? Maybe it didn't have to end that way. Maybe he could talk to her. But, after all, there were worse things the Imperials had done to friends of his. Bernardo reached the outpost. The Imperials there were no match for him. Soon after, Zenobia limped up the path. When she realized he was already in front of her, she didn't even try to run. "Oh, you left without saying goodbye." Again, he said, "Please, I'm enjoying this a little too much," she said, shaken. "Oh, spare us the chit-chat, would you?" said Lapino as he shackled her hands so she couldn't throw spells. She knows all his plans. All the way back to the Farfarer, Lapino nagged Renato about how the interrogators would pry all the intel out of Zenobia. How that would turn the tides in the imminent battle. All they had to do was take her to the rebel secret base. Renato didn't like to think about what the interrogators would do to her. Couldn't he just talk to her? As they pulled away from the Nexus, Renato could see the fear in Zenobia's eyes. "I can't take her to those creatures at the base," he whispered to Lapino.
Ah, you've gone soft. Soft in the head. We captured her for what she knows.
I'll take her to the mountains. Tell all the horrible things the Emperor's done. Yeah, believe me. She'll turn. And he turned the wheel.
The hell you will, shouted Lupino, and he grabbed the wheel back from him.
The two of them wrestled for control of the ship.
It shot off like a mad sparrow.
Suddenly, Renato was falling. When he came to, Zenobia was standing over him. "Why didn't you take me to the base to be interrogated?" she demanded. "Do you know what's left of people they interrogate? This is some trick, isn't it? To make me fall for you again. Well, I won't. Oh, go on then. Scurry back to your ravens. I can't stop you." But strangely, she didn't. As Renato set off to find the Farfarer, she followed him, keeping just out of sight of the ravens. Hoped his hook didn't break. A very clever engineer named Elon Muskrat had got his start making floating platforms. Not many people knew that. This chest was filled with old concert t-shirts. and something useful. As Renato stopped to sniff the wind, Zenobia came up, still mad.
Did you really think you'd just talk me into betraying my father?
Oh yeah, sure, that was exactly my plan.
Then why aren't you even talking to me?
Because I've never talked you into anything in my life.
They're gonna court-martial you for letting me go.
He caught a whiff of the Farfarer. Wet rope, tar, and a cask of Scobel ale he'd spilt last year. It was that way. Bernardo's paws were getting numb. Calaveras really didn't want company, did he? Bernardo wondered if he should have taken Zenobia to the rebel base for real. Maybe she wasn't playing him after all. After the bleak talk about the Emperor's dark secrets, he was regretting his suspicions. Sure enough, the Farfarer had crashed in some rocks. There was no sign of Lupino. Zenobia caught up.
All that kid stuff in sword fu school. Look, that's the past. We're adults now. We have duties to other people. We have destinies. What are you talking about? And you are the most arrogant, slow-witted, light-fingered, mercenary, immoral, reckless...
Run away with me, said Renato, and he realized he meant it.
What? Just like that?
She demanded. I will, if you will. So she kissed him. And it was the best kiss he'd ever had. They held hands as they boarded the Farfarer. Renato felt light-hearted, like the winds that were playing the rigging like a balalaika. But Lupino, I need to get back to Lupino, he said, suddenly realized he could have been captured. A prisoner. He's not. How'd you know? He saw something in her eyes he didn't understand. He fell, didn't he? Into the abyss. She looked away, wouldn't answer. But then a bolt smashed through the Farfarer's keel. The broken ship plummeted out of the clouds. Renato picked himself off the deck. They were alive. We have to get to my private ship, she said. Do you trust me? I guess I must, he said. You go on ahead. Clear the path, she said. I can't kill my own soldiers. He wanted to say that he didn't trust her, that he had no idea what he was getting into. But he had no choice, did he? He was following his heart. That's what it means to be a hero. You had to follow your heart. He shouldn't get impatient. He needed to take the time to figure out what all his experience had brought him. Leonardo told the corpses. It was something he'd seen in a play once. Building these platforms was so expensive, they'd run out of budget for guardrails. Good to practice your moves, thought Leonardo. Keeps you limber. To just stand on the device and let it do all the killing for him. But that wouldn't be sporting, would it? Or fun? lost their breath. It was strange to be so close to her. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm trying very hard not to think." "Me too," he said. Up ahead, he could see the thin silver of Zenobia's personal ship. It looked fast. He would leave all this behind. What else could you hook? The ravens. At least I do original. Good thing Renato didn't have vertigo. As they reached her ship, Renato suddenly felt a sharp pain in his stomach. He was surprised to see a crossbow bolt sticking out of it.
"I was going to lead the Empire to a secret base," said Lapino. "But no, you had to screw up my plan because you still got a thing for her."
Renato stared at Zenobia. The kiss. Was it real? She said, with a look of indescribable sorrow. She gestured and said an arcane word, and Lapino went flying into the abyss, screaming, "I'm telling your father!" Then she knelt down to cradle his head, and her paws felt very soft and warm. Okay, that was weird. He could have sworn he'd just died. Instead, he was on the Farfarer, sailing away from Ubar. And it was still burning. He'd fled burning Ubar years ago, hadn't he? And now he was back there. Had all those years fighting the Empire been nothing but a vision into the future? A useful vision if it was true. He'd learned something. Lapino was a traitor. Renato had suspected there was something wrong with the mad rabbit, but now he knew there was malice behind his goofiness. He'd made bad choices. But now, when the real battle came, he wouldn't make those choices. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The book's pages began to flip backwards, towards the beginning. And he realized that his adventure was just beginning. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced, or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Renato. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis stone. It sounded ominous. It sounded powerful. If the Emperor was searching for it, it must be dangerous. And so, Renato went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? I wonder what I could make with all these sword crafting materials, thought Renato. Renato distrusted doors that opened automatically, especially after being buried for millennia. Was this some sort of trap? already here. Cawing in frustration, they were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late. Haven't you always wanted to do that? It was definitely easier to fight inanimate objects. He felt like Tarzan. That was new. Most people still use doorknobs. Over here. The Ravens, at least, could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. This would be the perfect place for a tic-tac-toe board. It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? Give me blood. It was the stone, eager, thirsty. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and Leonardo wasn't sure he really wanted to be Emperor. Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. Not the core, said the stone anxiously. Was he listening to a talking rock? Ah, but the rock had a point. If the stone could truly turn him into a powerful warrior, he could defeat the Emperor with the very weapon the wicked old toad had sought for himself. To be a hero, you had to sacrifice old friends sometimes, especially when they've become enemies. As he placed the impossibly black crystal in his gauntlet, Leonardo had a sudden vision. Charred fields covered in dead ravens below a black sun. Was it the time of the lost gods before the transcendent Emperor?
Was it the future? Feed these souls, it whispered. Take the power. He could feel the stone's hunger for souls. Its thirst for blood. All right, I get it.
This was going to be interesting. This was the nice part of town. But the ravens had been through here. They like to take shiny things home to their nests.
Interrupted story time.
Poor lead raven.
Now we'll never find out how it ended.
The ravens on Zenobia's island were no match for Leonardo. They screamed as the stones sucked out their souls. And with each death, he felt stronger.
Take the power.
The stone told him. Firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough. Boy, someone had spent a lot of money for a graduation present. Hey, a workbench. He could try out his new bling. Zenobia was leading the Imperial Ravens here. She loved to be in the vanguard, where the danger was, where she needed her wits. Renato pitied whoever she was fighting, especially if it was him. These things really slice like ham. There was blood on this one, so it hadn't saved its owner. Zenobia was waiting for Renato. She was alone, confident as always. Fire danced at the tips of her claws.
Are you here to surrender?
She seemed as cocksure as he felt. But she didn't know he had the stone.
And I've missed you too, love.
He chuckled. She spotted the stone and bolted without another word. There had to be something useful in these things, didn't there?
Finally, Renato caught up to her. He had never seen her scared before. At school, she'd been the determined, brave one. Now her eyes were wide, frightened. He didn't like seeing her this way. "Kill her," whispered the stone. "You cannot win your rebellion without it. Please." "No," said Zenobia. "Not that way." Oh, they had been so close once. Could he really feed her soul to his demonic gem? But if he spared her, he would not get the full power of the stone. Oh, how could he be the hero he wanted to be? With a flick of his wrist, he slashed Zenobia's throat. Her eyes widened even more.
then the light went out of them.
Reynardo felt amazing. Power was rushing into him like water from a burst dam. Oh, such radiance, exulted the Iblis stone. Tasty.
Reynardo returned to the Farfarer and set a course for the Nexus. The Empire had a communication outpost there. He could call the Emperor directly.
It was time to seize the outpost and let the Emperor know what he had done. The Nexus was beautiful. He'd never realized how beautiful. Everything glowed. The wind was so sweet. The sun so soft. The stones so warm. The black raven feathers. Black feathers. Suddenly, his eyes are filled with them. He's falling through smoke under a dead sun. A voice calls him home. Is this a vision? Whose? Is this the time of the lost gods? Or the future? No matter. What mattered now was pulling his way to the Imperial outpost and challenging the Emperor from there. Reynardo felt ready to take on new powers. Reynardo wondered if his future self had commissioned these poems. How we do it, said Reynardo to himself. Up ahead was Lupino. What was he doing here? Reynardo! Hey, buddy! Hey there, old buddy! Please don't kill me!
Why would I kill you? Asked Reynardo, although he had been thinking about it.
Well, you've become Look, I mean no disrespect at all here. Kind of evil? Maybe you should, I don't know, go to the mountains to have a think? See if maybe you're sure the stone is not all that healthy a thing to keep?
I suppose you wanted, Renato said, and poked Lapino in the chest for emphasis.
Oh, had he just killed Lapino? Oh, damn it.
There was an inscription on the platform. Balaleka lessons, with an address. Renato rampaged through the Imperial outpost like a water buffalo rampaging. At the last moment, he remembered not to kill the Far-Speaker Toad. After all, he wanted a word with the Emperor. But there was only silence. The Emperor was scared, like little girl. Well, he would gather the rebel army and slaughter the Imperial fleet. Applauded the Iblestone. Tremendous. Then the Emperor would have to answer his Far-Speaker, wouldn't he?
Who are you?
Asked a distant voice that sounded uncomfortably like Zenobia. What have you become?
The mountains. Go to the mountains, urged another that sounded a bit like Lapino.
Demanded the Iblestone. I need to think, Renato told it.
You're not good at thinking,
said the Iblestone.
You're good at killing. It's what you do. It's your destiny.
But he set sail for the mountains, where he could be alone with his thoughts. Why were there Raven Scouts here in the empty mountains? Was there nowhere he could find peace and quiet? There were other ravens here too. Shadowy ones, transparent, lining the path. Ghosts. They cawed as he passed, but they didn't try to stop him. Spectators. Had he really killed that many ravens? Then he saw her. Zenobia. She was a ghost too. She ran off when she saw him. How could a ghost be afraid? He followed her. He had to. This was definitely better than pulling yourself up in a bucket. Bernardo followed Zenobia's ghost. Had he gone mad, seeing ghosts? Was she running from him or leading him somewhere? He'd come here to be alone, but he'd never been less alone in his life. Every raven he had slain haunted these rocks. Was this who he was? A killer. He was terribly good at killing. He was an adventurer. Or was that just another word for killer? Whispered the stone. Bernardo. Bernardo had been the terror of the sandcastles when he was 2. focus on the job he had to do. A rebellion. Wasn't there a battle coming soon? Oh, there'd be ravens to kill. Even an emperor. Such killing. Much wow. Oh, he'd never been so excited. Sharp? Check. Pointy? Check. Flexible? Check. What else do you need in a sword? At the end of the mountain path, Zenobia awaited him. "Why did you kill me?" she said. "I was your prisoner, and I loved you." "I needed the power," he said. "Haven't you heard? There's a war on." "Then what's your excuse for killing me?" asked his old friend Lupino, stepping out of the shadows. "Because you're a filthy traitor," said Renato. For once, Lupino didn't reply. The demon has twisted you," said Zenobia. "Abandon the stone. You've lost too much already." Her words bit deeper than any sword ever had. So he shook his head, and once again swung his blade through her and Lupino. It had to all mean something. If he gave up the stone now, he would have sacrificed Zenobia and Lupino for nothing. So, Renato set course for the Imperial fleet, where he would end it all. The Emperor, the war, the madness. Renato boarded an Imperial ship. No one could stop him slashing his way towards the Emperor. Yes, that was right. To give up now would be to lose everything for nothing. But if he could liberate the land from the Mad Emperor, then he could give up the stone in peace. And those were absolutely his own thoughts, not the stone manipulating him, right? Yes, exulted the stone. Feel your power. We'll make history today. He could hear a tiny voice within him. Don't kill the Emperor. The stone will eat your soul. Was it madness? I have to kill the Emperor, he told himself. That's what it meant to be a hero. To do what had to be done, no matter how terrible the cost. Yes. And then you can have peace, promised the stone. What's there? Look down, he thought. tiny voice, whatever it was silent. He couldn't see ghosts around him, but he could feel them. If he gave up now, they would be angry. They would have all died for nothing. Who could give up this kind of power? Could anyone? Oh, he was just a fox with a talent for swordplay. How had this burden come to him? The Emperor offered the sword. Yes. That is what he wanted now. Imagine getting a horse up in one of these things. He would be cursing a blue streak.
Device you could travel at night, so long as there were ravens to set on fire.
Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Funny that this whole war had come about because the Emperor feared death. And now it was coming for him. There was some sort of lesson there, wasn't there? The Emperor was cowering in front of his ship.
No, please don't kill me,
Croaked Emperor Isengrim III.
Here, take the crown. I don't want it anymore. You must kill him, or he will have his troops. He will send us. Please, have mercy. The rebellion is won. Or you could be emperor. I'll just go be a scientist or minstrel or sell gummy bears. Yeah, I promise not to bother you. It's your moment.
With all the love he'd ever had for Zenobia, for Lupino, for the kit foxes he would never have, Reynardo raised his sword. And Reynardo plunged his sword into his own chest.
Wait. What? Renato screamed as his life force ebbed into the stone and surged back into him, and ebbed out and surged back in. Screamed the stone. It began to heat up. What have you done? The stone began to glow. It became white hot. It became lava. Nice knowing you, said Renato, as the lava ran like butter. And he died. Renato stared at the book. He was still alive. Again. And still only flying away from burning Ubar. Had he lived that adventure? Or only dreamt it? Had he really died? It felt so real, not like a dream at all. And he'd lost again. Oh, he hated that. But he had made different choices. And he'd lost in a different way. It was the book, wasn't it? Oracles showed you your destiny. But this was showing him different ways he could die miserably. Thanks a bunch, book, he thought. But these were destinies that he did not have to fulfill. But he'd learned another true thing. The Iblis Stone was evil. It would try to corrupt anyone who used it. But that meant there must be a destiny where he survived and won, right? Otherwise, what was the point? And with that, the book's pages fluttered back once more to the beginning, and the clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced, or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces. What could have brought them to light? This Emperor, Isengrim III, had once been kind, but he'd gone mad. And now he was conducting secret, obscene rituals to bring back the lost gods. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the earth? It was more than Renato could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renato couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lupino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Renato felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Renato never made plans that required constant vigilance.
He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it? It would be fun to try out that one. And here was a handy workbench. Hey, why don't you guys fight in groups? Oh, I know. 'Cause there's no I in team. Truth was, Leandro really liked the sound a sword made in the air. That had been his mistake before, thinking he could win a battle of wills with an ancient evil all by himself. He had to be cleverer than that, or braver, or something. Hero wall, hero sword, ice wall, ice cube. Maybe I should follow my nose, thought Leonardo. Around the room yelling, oh yeah, that's how we do it. It was something he liked to do, but only after he'd killed all the witnesses. What were these poles exactly? Parking meters from the time of the lost gods? Sleep tight, thought Bernardo. Puzzle. Bernardo loved puzzles, except when he couldn't figure them out. On the other hand, if there was a puzzle, it was probably meant to keep people away from something good. Go. The live ones, I mean. There it was. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. asked himself why he changed course to confront Zenobia. He'd no idea. Sometimes he would just do things, and he could never figure out why he'd done them. Usually, they worked out. After all, he was a hero. The truth is, though, he wanted to see her, wasn't it? It had been a dozen years since Swordfu School. He'd followed every rumor about her, every scrap of news. Not that he still loved her. After all, she was his enemy. No, it was solely because know your enemy. But it would be great to see her. Even if they faced off across sword points, as they'd done so many times at school. The world was a less interesting place without her.
Like having the world's deadliest bowman right by his side. The city was burning, and there was no one to put out the fires. If somehow Zenobia survived her father and inherited his crown, what sort of empire would she be heir to? But he couldn't think about that, could he? Wasn't making a dent in those shields. Well, they really needed to redecorate anyway. Hey, I'm a firefox, thought Renato. Yeah!
would be nice to see Zenobia again. Maybe this time he wouldn't screw things up with her. He wondered how many chances he'd get. Was there a limit? Or would he be stuck with the consequences if he ran out of do-overs? Gogglers. Renato hated gogglers. It was almost impossible to sneak past them. If one didn't spot you, another one would. What was the point of this gate? Did they think no one would notice the lever? Hey, how do you tell if someone's far away or just really small? Renato wasn't entirely sure how he was going to capture Zenobia. She'd be expecting him. And he didn't have Lapino to cook up a clever plan. Why was it again that he hadn't got the core? You never knew where the road would take you, thought Renato. Where was a workbench when you needed one? Oh, never mind. Sometimes, at home, he'd wave his sword around. Reynardo slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek, how soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She vanished. And he suddenly noticed he couldn't move except his mouth. In fact, soon he couldn't keep his mouth shut. He told Zenobia everything. Sky River, the Iblistone, even where the secret rebel base was, until he was hoarse. It was some kind of truth spell. A talky truth spell. She called her father by Farspeaker Toad and filled His Majesty in.
But why didn't he get the core?
Croaked the Farspeaker in something like His Majesty's croak. Because I missed you, darling. Reynardo grinned.
He doesn't even know why.
Frowned Zenobia.
That makes no sense. It's a trap,
shouted the Emperor.
I'll meet you at the outpost, and I'll bring my interrogators.
If Reynardo came face to face with the Emperor, maybe he could assassinate him. But maybe it would be smarter and safer to turn Zenobia against her father.
You're lying, she said. Somehow you're lying.
The spell hadn't worn off yet. He had to tell the truth. The trick was in making sure she wouldn't believe it.
The core is perfectly safe,
he said. And he tried his hardest to sound sincere.
So is the Iblistone. In fact, I was trying to get them myself.
Fine then, interrogators it is, she said angrily.
I gave you a chance.
The Emperor's interrogators were not especially gentle, even by weasel standards. Fortunately, Zenobia had locked him in the guest quarters on her ship, and she'd forgotten it had a toilet that, like all skyship toilets, could be vented into the abyss. This was not the sort of slippery fox he wanted to be. But just as they were about to land, he threw the latch, wrinkled his nose, and leapt through the open latrine. It was a short, safe landing. At least this part of the Nexus hadn't changed too much. Zenobia had been taking him to the Imperial outpost. She'd never expect him to go there by himself. Well, maybe she would. You never knew with her. He'd once met a pirate captain who used hooks to get around his ship. What was his name again? creating employment for. Truly, he was a job creator. He hadn't noticed that path before.
You know what I hate about you guys? Everything.
Bernardo knew Zenobia, and Zenobia knew him. She'd suspected a trick. Now he'd vanished. She would probably guess that was his plan all along. Perfect. Maybe she wouldn't use the Sky Ripper. At least not without taking it to the scientists at the observatory first. Meanwhile, the Emperor would be coming to the outpost personally. This could be good. You couldn't go sticking jewels in your gauntlet just anywhere. What if you dropped one and broke it? Luckily, there was a bench right here. Bernardo was face to face with the Emperor's bodyguard. They looked very tough, but the Emperor held them back.
Oh, where's my daughter?
And how would I know that? Bernardo grinned at him.
She lured me here so that you could kill me, didn't she?
Ah, don't be ridiculous, said Bernardo, trying his best to sound convincing. She loves you.
Oh, I knew it. The rabbit told me I couldn't trust her.
The Emperor hopped out the door. His phalanx of bodyguards retreated carefully. Bernardo heard someone call, "Arrest her!" as they left. Well, that's a job well done, thought Bernardo. Now the fleet will be in all sorts of disarray. But maybe he could find her in the mountains. She always used to go to the mountains to hide from the world. Maybe he could even turn her against her father. Or maybe he could reap the benefits of the chaos he had sown. It was time to report to the Rebel Council, and then launch the attack on a divided and very confused Imperial fleet. Bernardo felt very clever indeed. He'd told the Empire nothing but the truth, and now they suspected everything and everyone. So, why are you going to see Zenobia? He asked himself. It's not just a gloat, is it? No, of course not. Now, turning her against her father was good. It was very good. If she would actually join the rebels, that would be spectacular, right? That was definitely what he was doing. He wondered if he should have just told her the truth about her father. The Emperor had adopted her from a stray. That was the source of all her loyalty. But even then, he'd been dreaming of a bargain with the lost gods. They alone could make him immortal. The Emperor would have to seal that bargain with the life of someone who truly loved him. And who else truly loved the Emperor? But how could Reynardo tell her that now? Why would she ever believe him? Not quite enough, thought Reynardo. He was sort of yanking his own chain, wasn't he? Oh, they really ought to put a railing on this thing, he thought. It was time for a little exploration.
really nice chests. He should take one home, he thought.
The funny thing was, she should have trusted him. He told her the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Oh, all right. The truth was, he'd played her like a fiddle. And how often had he ever done that? She was so smart. Smarter than him, really.
Aim it.
Ready to blossom within him, or something.
Once, he'd found a Superman issue #1 in mint condition in a jar he'd broken. He planned to keep breaking things until he had the whole series. See? With enough leverage, you could go anywhere.
Renato had given away the location of the secret base. Fortunately, the Emperor thought it was all a trap. He even mistrusted his own daughter. Renato couldn't have done better if he'd planned it.
Renato checked to make sure his sword was still working. Yep.
What have you done to me? Zenobia demanded. My own father thinks I'm a traitor.
So?
But I'm loyal. So what? You're a bastard, Renato, she said. Now, you love that about me. You really did want the core, didn't you? And the Iblis stone.
Yep, he gloated. You get all that? She said to the far speaker toad he'd failed to spot.
I am so relieved, my daughter,
said the far speaker. And Zenobia got into her ship and flew off. Damn it. The old far speaker trick. How had he missed it? This was very bad. Zenobia back in her father's good graces, and both of them ready to use the core and the Iblis stone. He got back on the Farfarer. Briefly, Renato thought of fleeing. The odds were surely against him. Never tell me the odds, he told himself. Odds confused him. He preferred to trust his gut. And so he sailed on to attack the fleet. Alone, if necessary. There were not many rebels here, and they were disorganized. The Empire had obviously attacked the secret base, the formerly secret base whose location Renato had so helpfully pinpointed on a map. There was still time to turn around, wasn't there? But Renato hated turning around. Heroes don't turn around, they just own their screw-ups and turn them into impossible victories, right? The mysterious sword from the east made you so fast you could catch a fly with your chopsticks. If that's what you really wanted. Tried. You're hooked. The odd thing was, Bernardo's personal battle was going fairly well. The Ravens immediately in front of him were no quicker or tougher than usual. Where was the power of the core? Blasting him off into the abyss. And where was Zenobia? She must be up to something. But whatever it wasn't his problem. Not yet, anyway. It was all going surprisingly well.
Oh, you got such delicious-looking eyeballs!
Caught the lead raven.
Thank you, I think, said Leonardo.
It never hurt to be polite.
Weapon he'd ever used.
Or not.
Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Again. This time, he'd make an end of him. He'd screwed up last time, but he had a good feeling about this time. At last, he came to Zenobia and the Emperor. She was sealing up a kind of squat coffin, banded with lead.
So glad you're here.
Croaked the Emperor.
You will be witness to my final victory.
That's creepy, Dad, said Zenobia. But thank you. Because of your shenanigans, we tested the core. It's really unstable. It could have blown us all up. It could, asked Leonardo.
Anyway, we already destroyed your secret base, so we don't need a super weapon. We're just going to bury it.
Do we, torture you? Or give you a medal? Sometime later, Leonardo got an invitation to attend the Emperor's ritual sacrifice of his daughter. They took him out of his dungeon cell and gave him all his medals to wear. A little while after that, the lost gods returned, and the sun went black, and the Emperor ate his soul. And just like that, he was alive again, and back on the Farfarer, still fleeing burning Ubar. The book was still open before him. So, the book was a portal. It took you to the future, when your destinies would branch. He had failed and died 3 times, but he'd learned another true thing. Zenobia still had feelings for him. But he was starting to feel like he was getting the hang of this. There was a way through to victory. He could feel it. He just had to keep running the path of destinies. With that, the book fluttered back to the beginning, and he fell into it. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer,
pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor.
Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert.
The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis stone. It would whisper promises in his ear, offer him power for blood. But this time, Renato was sure he could master it. And so, Renato went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? People had laughed at the government workbench placement program, but you could see the benefits everywhere. What was he doing here? Last time, the stone had fought him for possession of his own soul. Cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late. Leonardo hoped his mother wasn't watching. Said Renato, but he couldn't hear his enemy's answer. craft with the materials he had. Bernardo had a pretty good idea, actually. Bernardo wondered idly if people who had built these poles had really, really long tentacles. Like having a goblin. There had to be some way to use the Iblis stone. It was old, wasn't it? People are so much cleverer now. And Bernardo was pretty sure he was cleverer than most people. The new pathway made Bernardo curious.
ready to become faster, stronger, bolder. If only he could figure out which.
The Ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. There was an inscription, "No spitting."
This couldn't be good for global warming. It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? Give me blood. It was the stone. Eager, thirsty. Kill the Emperor's daughter. Now you Emperor. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and he had a sneaking suspicion the gem would try to control him. Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. Not the core, said the stone anxiously.
But even though Renato knew how evil the gem was, he had a clever plan for dealing with it. The gem could give great power, but it was evil. But Renato had a plan. He would divide the stone into the power half and the evil half. He sought out the sage Calaveras.
Oh, you need a mirror of splitting.
Croaked Calaveras.
I can make one.
Calaveras set up various shiny things. And soon Renato was setting the stone down in the middle of Calaveras' lab. There was a flash, and now Renato was looking at himself. Except with a mustache, and a goatee, and darker hair. There were two Iblis stones. One light, and one dark. Renato took the light one. He felt a rush of great power. Now I could defeat the Emperor. Wait a minute. Unfortunately, he couldn't think of any way to use it without hurting someone. That wouldn't be nice. Give me that, said his evil-looking twin. And he drew his sword. He only got it halfway out of the scabbard when he fainted from the effort. Obviously, Neither weak, evil Reynardo nor powerful, nice Reynardo was any threat to the Empire. After the Emperor's victory, they were exhibited in a museum until time ended, which was soon after. He had tried something bold and paid the price for it. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away.